Hello everybody, this is Daniel with Daniel's Bullion Coins. So excited to come back to you again this week. I have my sweet wife Ingrid here. We're going to take some questions from everybody.
Yes, darling.
Go ahead, hit me with the first one.
Okay, I was going to say, as usual, we start off. What did you see this weekend?
This week here at the shop. So it's been interesting this week to watch people start to realize that silver is the play. As the rubber band is stretching, everybody, you can see it stretching, you can feel it stretching. The price of silver is being held down. And it just is obvious because back in the 80s, gold was $1,000 and the price of silver was $50. In the 2010s, it was $2,000 and the price of silver was $50. And here we are, $3,000 gold, and the price of silver is 30 something, low 30s. So obviously there's clearly manipulation moving the price of silver down. And people have come in this week realizing that something isn't quite right. You know, how can you have a silver deficit each year? The amount that comes out of the ground, and we consume 20% more than what comes out of the ground. So obviously they're manipulating the price down, and they're making money off of that. And what's funny is one day they're going to switch from betting on the price going lower to betting on the price going higher. And so they can make money going both ways. And when they decide to switch, which we don't know when that's going to be, but it's going to be pretty soon, it looks like, they're going to switch to it going higher, and they're going to make an astronomical amount of money betting on it going higher. So get in now, I believe, in my opinion, and then when they do switch to betting on it going higher, you'll be there for that.
And we saw people coming in buying 90% this week.
Yes, the 90% is always our favorite, the dimes, quarters, and halves, because you can actually barter with that. You can actually go out to the farmer and trade for a loaf of bread, trade for chicken or whatever, get your tractor parts. And so we're really big on the 90% because of its authenticity, incremental fungibility of it. So if you're just getting started, we just got started, our opinion is 90%.
That's right. Yes, we do. Okay, and my next question is, what do we see going on with the LBMA again this week? And explain what the LBMA is.
Yes, the London Bullion Exchange is exactly where I think everything originates from. It's where originally the gold and silver, and I believe it's still controlled there. We think it's the Fed, we think it's the United States right now, but ultimately I believe it's controlled by the LBMA and the BIS, the banking system that's over there. And so we've talked before about how 2,000 metric tons of gold has left the LBMA and has come to the U.S. Well, that gold, we were expecting it to be reported as to who was doing that, who was removing the gold. And in the middle of March, conveniently, it was considered currency rather than bullion, so they didn't have to say what type of who was getting it. Well, the fact that they're calling it currency, we know that falls under the U.S. government is getting it. So my hypothesis now, or my thinking, or piecing together what I'm hearing, is that this gold is replenishing the Feds where they leased it out.
From the Fort Knox.
From Fort Knox. They leased it out to other companies, to other countries, and now they're wanting it back because Elon Musk and Trump have talked about doing an audit. Doing an audit. And so they are coming back with that and bringing it back to the 2000. Wow, it's funny doing it before we open. It's worked out really good for the peace and quiet because it's chaos behind. But just the phone ringing makes my head spin.
I don't know if they could hear that or not, but anyway.
So we're talking about the LBMA and the gold coming back to the U.S. And what they're going to do is, I believe, is that Scott Bessent, the number one holder, his number one asset, personal asset, which he had to list when he became a cabinet secretary, Treasury secretary, was gold.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes, and it's an astronomical amount. It's 7 or 8 figures, 8 figures
oh my goodness,
that he owns in gold. So he knows what's coming.
Right.
Well, I'm thinking what they're going to do is they're going to go into the Fed and they're going to pay for the gold at $42.22.
That's where it was last audited.
That's what it's valued at on the balance sheet of the Fed. Oh, okay, if it's $42.22, here, I'll pay you for it.
Sure.
Now I've got it, and a minute later, it's worth $3,000, and we'll put it into the Treasury, which we talked about, the sovereign wealth fund that's going to be in the Treasury, and then we can start running things profitably with a new currency here in the U.S., a citizen's currency, which then we can put other assets in. We've talked about that, and we'll have this gold. And now Judy Shelton is talking about in the year 2026, which will be 250 years of this nation, by then we will have a gold-backed digital currency. So this administration has already said, and even Trump's sons have said, the next milestone where money's going to be, it's not going to be manufacturing, it's not going to be buildings, it's not going to be real estate, it's going to be the cryptocurrency. So that's where they're headed with the next valuations, you know. So picture $42.22, the Treasury pays for the gold, moves it to the Treasury, puts it in the sovereign wealth fund, and then they could set it at $4,000 or $5,000, whatever they want to set the value of gold at, and they can back it with a new citizen's currency. Then they can come out with a 50-year bond and start selling bonds. Then maybe you start to see 30-year, 20-year, 10-year, and all those types of things, because the currency it'd be a whole new currency operating under the reserve currency status of the world.
It's just wild. I mean, this is revolutionary. It
is revolutionary. Yes, yes, yes.
I find it funny. We both said this morning when he said he was going to Bedminster, that's one of the revolutionary. Well, he owns property there. But
yes. Yes. Well, they were storing ammo there at that
port. The artillery.
Artillery was stored there at Bedminster, and so he went back and started, and he's doing a Bedminster weekend this weekend. So it's revolutionary what's coming as far as the currency and how it's going to be changed.
Exactly.
Going back a little bit to what we're seeing this week, we saw a lot of our friends come in and from years, we've had 10 or 15 years, customers and friends coming in and saying, okay, what's going on with gold and silver? And I'm like, what do you mean? 10 years ago, I told you it was going to double. And I'm telling you again, it's going to double again from here. So 6,000 and above.
Right.
And everybody's like shocked. Well, it doubled from 12, 1,400, 1,500 when and some of them bought, some of the friends, some of the acquaintances, they would buy. And some of them just check in with me and see how it's going. So isn't it ironic and funny to see how to get to 1,000 took 45 years? From 1,000 to 2,000 took about 12 years. From 2,000 to 3,000 took about 4 years. And that's one of the reasons why I think from 3,000 to 4,000 will be just a year or two.
Right.
Because the speed and the amount is exponentially climbing.
And they may revalue it too.
Right, especially if they revalue it. Well, they're going to have to because in order to be
to come out of the debt.
In order to be an honest society and an honest currency, you have to revalue it and reestablish the value of it.
That's right.
In order to back your currency and be able to have manufacturing. See, they're able to take our manufacturing because they can manipulate their currency. To cut out all that manipulation and bring manufacturing back, you have to have a stable currency. That's one of the key elements of manufacturing in your country. And one of our premier manufacturing is going to be cryptocurrencies. If we can be the nation that introduces that and then spreads that around the world.
And the AI too.
And AI, right, that technology. Keep that here. Everything else, I can't remember the list, but everything else we've developed has now produced overseas. There's a list of things like cell phones and all this other technology that we did all the research, all the development, but other countries produce it now.
Because of the prior tariffs that had coming into the country that's set by the other countries.
Right, other countries are charging
that's
us.
Change.
Right. Not only are they charging tariffs to us, but they are able to manipulate their currency. But now, if we can do reciprocal tariffs on them, make that an even playing field on tariffs, then we need to correct the currency problem also. Now we can do reciprocal tariffs and even the trade deficit, make that zero instead of having a $2 trillion trade deficit every year, take that out. Then we can get rid of the IRS and start having an external tax service. But we have to have an even playing field on the currency. And the only way I'm just piecing it together, is to have a citizen's currency. I'm calling it a citizen's currency because I haven't heard anybody else come up with a name or talk about this. But we have to have our own currency inside the U.S. So I think that's why Canada will become the 51st state.
Wow.
And maybe that currency will be like an Amero currency where it's Canada, Mexico, the U.S., something like that. We'll still have our border with Mexico. They won't be a state, but they could operate under our currency.
Wow.
You know, they'll say, yeah, we'll take that currency and operate underneath of it.
It really is amazing times we're living in.
Yeah, that's a lot of information right there all at once.
Well, my next question, I guess, kind of ties everything. We'll end with this, but where do you see gold going? We kind of already said it, but.
Right. Well, gold is going to just chug along with the inflation and all the different devaluations of currencies around the world.
Yeah.
There are people talking about, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. I've heard 50,000. But fair value is where gold is ultimately going. And what I mean by fair value is that the price of gold will equal the Dow. So the Dow's at 40,000 right now, gold's at 3,000. Those two are going to meet somewhere in the middle. 20 to 22,000, I'm guessing. Plus, if you see how much currency we have and you divide in the price of gold would be 22,000. Wow. So it works out pretty even that we've increased the currency so much that the Dow's gotten to 40,000.
Yeah.
Gold would need to come to 22,000 and the Dow would have to come down. When those two are lined up equal, that's when we've got fair value and we can start to look at restarting the system and running it on but austerity is a difficult thing.
Oh, goodness,
you're giving your kid this allowance and they're not mowing the grass, they're not taking out the trash. A lot of fraud, and you're going to say, okay, hey, you haven't mowed the grass, you haven't done your homework, your grades, and you're telling the child you need to get these things taken care of in order to keep your allowance going. And I remember Opie on Andy Taylor, he got down on the floor and he's kicking his feet and everything because he wants a quarter without having to do the trash and take out and mow the grass. And his friends told him to throw a hissy fit. Well, that's what's going to happen with austerity. People are going to have to start working for an honest living, and a lot of these free programs are going to have to be trimmed back.
Well, it's not just. There's so much fraud.
Well, right now we're working on the fraud and the corruption and the just insanity that's happening. But I'm thinking that eventually we're going to have to tighten up a little bit. Let's get a system that works first, and then start to reel in the real fraud and waste as far as food stamps, Section 8 housing, disability. All these things have got to be reined in also eventually. You can't just keep supporting people freely.
Yeah, and aren't there more people on the?
Yes, 52%. We passed
more
that.
Than work.
Right, more than work. Right.
That
More on the dole.
Really something.
And I think that's all employees, government employees and everything. Everybody who's expecting money from the government. That number surpassed 50% a year or so ago.
So it's going to be tightening the belt.
Tightening the belt, yes.
You have to really.
No matter what you do.
That's right.
And that's why I encourage people to have a side hustle.
Yeah.
Have two things. Be diversified.
Yeah.
You have your regular job, your regular income. Well, do something on the weekends and the evenings that you can actually generate extra income that's outside of being dependent on the dollar. You really, as Christians, we don't want to be dependent on the government or dependent on the dollar.
Right.
You better be self-sufficient.
Trust the Lord.
Right, trusting the Lord and finding out what He would have you to do, what your capabilities are, and implement those into your life.
Yes.
And you'll find that that'll probably be more profitable than your regular 9-to-5 job.
Yes. Get in
Very
line.
good.
Yes, thank you,
Well,
honey.
thank you so much. It's been great this week.
It's been a good one.
Appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Blessings.